Maxwell Hughes occupied his corner office on the 25th floor of the Hughes Tower, a striking glass structure that loomed over the skyline of downtown Chicago. Life thrived in the city below, yet his office remained a sanctuary of silence. The gentle hum of the air conditioner, the soft tapping of fingers on keys from his assistants, and the sporadic clink of a coffee cup formed a subtle backdrop to his intense focus. Maxwell embodied a life of routines, precision, and control, qualities that had propelled him to the role of CEO at one of the nation's rapidly expanding tech firms. The riches and prestige associated with his title were the culmination of years of dedication and personal sacrifices, choices that had taken a significant toll on his personal life. His focus was unwavering, with every moment dedicated to board meetings, contracts, and product launches. Life unfolded in a cozy, familiar rhythm, and he embraced it wholeheartedly. That morning, as Maxwell perused the latest financial reports, the door to his office swung open unexpectedly. He glanced upward, anticipating the arrival of an assistant bearing an urgent issue, but to his surprise, a young woman stepped into the room. In her late 20s or perhaps early 30s, she donned a simple yet impeccably tailored blazer paired with slacks. She seemed agitated, her cheeks reddened, and her eyes brimming with a palpable urgency. Maxwell arched an eyebrow, surprised by her audacity. Before he had the chance to inquire about her identity, she moved closer and set down two children, appearing to be twins, right in front of him. The girl's voice shattered the stillness. "You're our father," she sobbed, her voice quaking with feeling. The words struck Maxwell with the force of a blow, rendering him utterly speechless. He rose from his desk, his thoughts racing to grasp the unfolding situation. The little ones, barely 4, held tightly to her, their wide, innocent eyes observing him with a blend of wonder and trepidation. The girl's face glowed with resolve, as if she had borne this secret for an eternity and had at last arrived at a pivotal moment. Maxwell's thoughts surged with intensity. What on earth was this? A practical joke? An error? He cast a fleeting look at the girl, his mind swiftly drifting back to memories of yesteryear. He struggled to remember ever having crossed paths with her, much less fathering children. His personal life had nearly vanished, entirely absorbed by his relentless pursuit of work and ambition. He was too consumed by his pursuits to entertain the idea of relationships, much less family. He couldn't recall the last occasion he had truly connected with someone on a deeper level. Yet here she stood, asserting that he was the father of these children. The stillness in the room was overwhelming as Maxwell contemplated the circumstances. He parted his lips, yet silence enveloped him. The girl, noticing his bewilderment, moved nearer, her face relaxing into a gentle expression. "Apologies for intruding like this," she said, her voice steady now, brimming with feeling. "I found myself at a loss for direction. You must trust me." She inhaled deeply before proceeding. "I'm Rachel Miller. These are your children, and I have been nurturing them alone all this time." Maxwell's thoughts spun wildly. Is it Rachel Miller? The name was unfamiliar to me. He delved into his recollections for any link to her, yet nothing surfaced. The twins, one boy and one girl, gazed at him with eager anticipation. The boy's tousled brown hair framed his face, accentuating the charming dimple that appeared when he smiled. The girl, with her captivating blue eyes, sparked a sense of familiarity in Maxwell, though he struggled to identify the source of that recognition. Rachel pressed on, her words tumbling out in a rush, as though she feared he might tune her out. "I apologize for the surprise. I have kept them from you as I was uncertain about your reaction. Yet it is only fair that they come to understand their father. They are entitled to understand who you are." Maxwell felt a knot in his stomach. Could this truly be unfolding? Could this be an intricate deception? His mind swirled with a tempest of uncertainty and incredulity. He had constructed his whole existence on the foundation of control, on the certainty of what lay ahead. This was entirely beyond his grasp. He cast another look at the children. Something in their expressions pulled at him, a sense of recognition lingering in the air. Rachel appeared to notice his uncertainty and stepped back, allowing him some room. Though you may not recall my face, I assure you, I speak only the truth, she declared, her voice unwavering even amidst the storm of emotions swirling within her. I had no desire to be here. I never intended to involve you in this situation. However, I require assistance. The twins require assistance. I can't manage this on my own any longer. I considered the possibility that you might play a role in their lives. Maxwell shook his head, attempting to dispel the haze that had enveloped him. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally managed to say, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Your presence escapes my memory. I'm not sure if this is actually happening. His words resonated with emptiness as he uttered them. His mind was shrouded in uncertainty. Rachel's eyes shimmered with unfallen tears. I comprehend, she murmured, her voice trembling. I was surprised that you accepted my words so quickly. This may seem overwhelming, but please take a moment to really observe them. Observe them closely and tell me you don't recognize a part of yourself in their expressions. Maxwell cast another glance at the twins, his heart racing within him. The boy fixed his gaze on him with an intensity that suggested he was already aware of the truth, even before Maxwell himself realized it. The girl offered a shy smile, her lips curling in a manner that evoked a faint memory he struggled to bring to mind. A fleeting moment of familiarity washed over him, yet it vanished before he could seize it. He shut his eyes briefly, seeking to calm the whirlwind of his thoughts. I need some time to process this, Maxwell finally said, his voice strained. I'm uncertain about the situation, but I require some clarity. We need to delve deeper into this topic. Rachel nodded, her expression gentle, yet the sorrow in her eyes remained unmistakable. I comprehend. I'll allow you some time to reflect on it. However, I urge you not to abandon them. With that, she pivoted and exited the office, the twins trailing closely in her wake. Maxwell found himself in the center of his office, gazing at the door, his thoughts a tempest of inquiries. Could this have been an error of some sort? What could have led to this situation? What was he meant to do next? His hands shook ever so slightly as he extended them toward the phone resting on his desk. Yet he found himself unable to initiate the call. He found himself engulfed by a wave of confusion and doubt. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share with your friends. Maxwell lingered in his office, the silence stretching around him after Rachel and the twins had departed, grappling with the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. The crisp angles of his workspace, the immaculate glass partitions, and the sweeping vista of downtown Chicago offered no solace to the tempest of ideas swirling in his head. He reclined in his chair, attempting to empty his mind, yet the haunting vision of Rachel's tear-streaked face and the pure, untainted expressions of the children lingered stubbornly in his thoughts. Who were those individuals? How did they discover his whereabouts? The inquiries appeared to stretch on indefinitely, with each one feeling increasingly insurmountable compared to the previous. He had always been a man who flourished in the realm of reason and evidence, yet this circumstance challenged every principle he had adhered to. The sudden buzz of his phone on the desk interrupted his train of thought. An email arrived from his assistant, inquiring about the status of a meeting he was scheduled to attend later that afternoon. Maxwell shut the email without offering a reply. It was of no consequence. At this moment, nothing held significance other than the peculiar meeting with Rachel. No matter how hard he fought to banish them, the thoughts relentlessly returned. He was caught off guard by this turn of events. He truly had not anticipated anything of this nature throughout his entire existence. How had he transitioned from leading a billion-dollar enterprise to facing the unexpected reality of impending fatherhood? It felt surreal, but Rachel's voice resonated in his thoughts. You are our father. He rose suddenly and began to walk back and forth, seeking to divert his mind to something, anything at all. His thoughts continually drifted back to his earlier days, to the time before he ascended to the role of CEO, when he was merely a young man at a tech startup, consumed by his relentless ambition. There was a period when he had been reckless with connections, perpetually occupied with his career to cultivate anything enduring. He found himself lacking both the time and the energy for any commitments, much less the idea of starting a family. He was a man with a clear vision, driven by a relentless pursuit of achievement. Yet, did he overlook something in his journey? Was there someone he had overlooked? A fleeting romance? A chance meeting that resulted in the arrival of these children? Maxwell settled back into his seat, massaging his temples thoughtfully. He was in urgent pursuit of answers, and time was of the essence. His instincts suggested that this was neither a scheme nor a prank. The authenticity in Rachel's voice, the anguish reflected in her eyes, it all felt profoundly genuine. Yet the concept of fatherhood, of raising two young children, twins to be precise, was something he found difficult to comprehend. His existence had consistently been orderly and expected. Every action he executed was deliberate, each stride approached with meticulous care. However, amidst the turmoil, Maxwell found himself yearning for tranquility, as chaos was the very last thing he desired in his existence. He rose once more, making his way to the expansive window that framed the city below. The afternoon air in Chicago was sharp and invigorating, with the sun sinking toward the horizon, stretching shadows across the bustling streets beneath. Maxwell gazed across the vast cityscape, his mind a tempest of ideas. The distant hum of traffic and the chatter of people strolling along the sidewalk reached his ears, yet everything felt remote, almost inconsequential. What significance did it hold if he could no longer grasp his own identity? His thoughts drifted to his college days, a time when he was a younger, more carefree version of himself. In those days, he experienced a short-lived romance with a woman he encountered at a conference. He recalled her name, Jessica. It was a brief chapter, merely a few months of light-hearted dating, before they chose to part ways. Yet Jessica stood apart from the rest. There was an elusive quality about her that caused him to hesitate, an aspect he struggled to articulate. They had never discussed what lay ahead, never crafted any plans. He had been so absorbed in his professional pursuits that the thought of anything substantial seemed far from his mind. But did that single moment, that fleeting time spent together, truly result in this? Is it possible that Rachel and the twins are the outcome of that? Maxwell felt his heart race as the idea took root in his thoughts. He needed to find out. He had to track down Rachel to inquire further. The doubt was eating away at him. He picked up his phone and called her, but it went unanswered. Naturally, she wasn't going to answer. He had no justification for pressing her for answers in such a sudden manner. Yet he found himself unable to release it. He had to meet her once more to grasp the entire narrative, to comprehend how everything had unfolded. Maxwell walked back and forth, his mind swirling with a chaotic mix of inquiries, anxieties, and uncertainties. The concept of fatherhood felt incredibly daunting. He had never envisioned himself in that position. He had consistently been the individual capable of immersing himself entirely in his tasks, skillfully sidestepping the interruptions of domestic life. The notion of looking after two young children, of bearing the weight of their care, was a thought that had never crossed his mind. Filled him with dread. He had grown accustomed to wielding authority, to making choices that impacted solely his own life. Yet, these children had entered the scene, and regardless of his feelings, they were now woven into the fabric of his existence. If Rachel spoke the truth, then they fell under his care. The phone vibrated once more, this time signaling a new text message. A message arrived from his attorney, inquiring about the progress of a current legal matter. Maxwell glanced at the message yet chose not to reply. His mind was entirely occupied with Rachel and the twins. He had to uncover the reality. What if they were his offspring? What implications would that have for the life he meticulously built? What if he chose not to embrace fatherhood? Was it really possible for him to simply turn and leave? However, the idea of leaving behind two children, particularly those who appeared to be in such desperate need of a father, felt deeply unsettling. The sound of a knock at the door broke through his reverie. Maxwell glanced over to find his assistant, Claire, framed in the doorway, her expression a blend of courtesy and concern. "Mr. Hughes, is everything all right?" she inquired. Maxwell found himself at a loss for words. How might he convey this to her? How might he articulate it to himself? "I'm doing well, Claire. It's just a small personal issue," he remarked, attempting to maintain his composure. "Please cancel all of my meetings for today. I require a moment to reflect." Claire nodded, her gaze lingering for a moment, suggesting an awareness of deeper truths hidden beneath Maxwell's facade. As she exited the room, Maxwell settled back into his chair, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He was certain of just one thing. This was impossible to overlook. Rachel and the twins had stepped into his world, regardless of his preparedness for their arrival. He needed to determine his next steps, and he realized he couldn't navigate this journey by himself. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell was restless. Time seemed to stretch endlessly in his office, with each passing hour feeling more prolonged than the one before. Since their fleeting meeting earlier that morning, Rachel had been silent. The unrelenting questions swirled in his mind, transforming his thoughts into a chaotic haze of confusion and dread. What if she was being dishonest? What if the twins didn't belong to him? Yet, despite his efforts to rationalize the situation, he found it impossible to dismiss the sense that her narrative held a certain truth, a sincerity in her tone when she revealed that the children belonged to him. He cast a quick look at the clock. It read 3:30 p.m. The chaos within his mind had consumed his entire afternoon. The meetings he had intended to attend felt insignificant at this moment. Everything he had built, every aspect of his business, seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the storm that had suddenly erupted in his life. He realized a choice was necessary, yet he found himself at a loss for how to begin. Was he prepared to encounter these children once more? Was he prepared to confront the reality hidden within Rachel's words? Maxwell made the decision to reach out to her. His hands quivered just a bit as he extended them toward his phone. Yet he swiftly dismissed the sensation. This held significant importance. He pressed her number and paused, anticipation hanging in the air. After a handful of rings, the call was picked up. "Greetings." Rachel's voice carried a sense of caution, wavering slightly. She likely anticipated his call, yet it appeared she was just as uncertain about the circumstances. Maxwell felt a wave of regret wash over him for not having reached out sooner, yet the uncertainty that lingered in his mind had kept him from doing so. "Rachel, it's Maxwell," he said, striving to maintain a calm tone. "This morning's events have been on my mind. I seek clarity on the current situation." A moment of silence lingered on the line, and he could almost sense the thoughts churning in her head. "I didn't expect your call," she said softly, "but I get it. I found it difficult to express, but I assure you, Maxwell, I'm being truthful. I understand this may be difficult to accept, but the twins, they belong to you." Maxwell shut his eyes, clutching the phone firmly. He required additional information to connect the dots. "Share all the details with me, Rachel. Commence at the outset. I seek clarity on how everything unfolded." Rachel let out a deep breath. "It's quite a tale," she started, her voice wavering just a bit, "but I'll do my best to keep it straightforward. I remember you from our college days, Maxwell. We weren't particularly close, yet we shared a fleeting connection. Some time has passed, and I wondered if you might recall me, but I certainly remember you. I recall your unwavering ambition, your constant gaze fixed on what lay ahead, on your professional journey. Our time together was brief, just a few months, yet it left a lasting impact." Maxwell's thoughts surged with intensity. University. That's when everything began to fall into place. He was consumed by his aspirations in those days, tirelessly striving for the next milestone, oblivious to the repercussions of his choices. He had engaged in casual dating, never envisioning that any of those interactions might evolve into something significant. Yet, as Rachel spoke, the pieces began to align perfectly. "Hold on," Maxwell interjected. "What unfolded next? Once we went our separate paths?" Rachel's voice quivered as she pressed on, her words emerging slowly, each one seemingly a challenge to articulate. Once we parted ways, your silence enveloped me. I continued with my life, but a few months later, I discovered I was pregnant. I found myself at a loss for what to do next. I was unsure of how to get in touch with you, hesitant to intrude upon your life. I decided to keep it to myself. Raising the twin solo has been quite the challenge, yet I've navigated through it all. I never intended to share this with you, Maxwell, but it's important for them to know their father. I understand this is a significant request, but I truly need you to become involved in their lives at this moment. The gravity of her words settled heavily, and Maxwell's thoughts spiraled with uncertainty. Two of a kind. He had offspring, and he was completely unaware. He was absent during their arrival, their significant moments, their initial words or first steps. What could have led to this situation? What could be the reason Rachel never reached out to him? Could this be her method of drawing him into her world after all this time? He found himself lost in a haze of uncertainty, questioning everything he once held to be true. "You should have told me sooner," Maxwell said, his voice tight with emotion. "I deserve to be informed. What is the reason for this timing?" Rachel paused, her silence palpable, and Maxwell could discern the soft rhythm of her breathing through the line. "I was uncertain about how to express this to you, Maxwell, and it filled me with fear. I didn't want you to turn them away and, in turn, turn me away as well. Finding the courage to approach you today was a journey, but I realized I could no longer keep it hidden. The twins are maturing, and it's clear they should learn about your identity." Maxwell rose from his desk, pacing the room as he took in all of Rachel's words. "I'm at a loss for words," he confessed, a tightness gripping his stomach. He held the title of CEO, navigating the complex world of business. He found himself unready for such a weighty obligation. The concept of fatherhood felt like a distant notion, disconnected from all that he had constructed in his existence. Rachel's voice took on a gentle quality. "I comprehend, Maxwell. This may seem overwhelming. However, if you are open to the experience and ready to engage with them, I believe you will discover something worthwhile. They merit the opportunity to understand you, to have you as part of their journey. I can't guarantee it will be simple, but I believe we can work through it together." Maxwell remained silent for an extended period. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was drawn to meet the children, to discover if they truly belonged to him. Yet, a different aspect of his being trembled at the possibilities that lay ahead. What if it wasn't his desire? What if he was unprepared? The weight of the situation was overwhelming, with so many factors to weigh and significant consequences looming. Yet, deep within him, a spark ignited, a glimmer of an emotion long forgotten. Hope. Is this the chance to create something unique? To create something positive? "All right," Maxwell finally spoke, his voice just a soft murmur. "I will meet them. However, I require some time. This requires my attention. I must determine my next steps." Rachel's voice resonated with a sense of relief. "Thank you, Maxwell. I understand it may seem overwhelming, but I truly appreciate your willingness to give it a shot." Maxwell ended the call and gazed out the window again. The sky deepened into a shadowy hue, while the city beneath appeared to swirl in a haze, its lights shimmering against the glass like distant constellations. He had reached a conclusion, yet the burden of it felt more substantial than anything he had ever borne before. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet he felt a resolute determination. It was time to confront what lay before him. He could no longer escape this. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell found himself restless throughout the night. He writhed in his sheets, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling through his mind. The notion of stepping into fatherhood at this point in his life felt nearly dreamlike. After countless years dedicated to constructing his empire, he invested every bit of his energy into his business. Family had always seemed like an afterthought to him. While he had engaged in casual relationships before, the idea of nurturing children and bearing the responsibility for another life felt completely unfamiliar to him. In the stillness of the night, he found his mind racing with all the reasons he felt unprepared for what lay ahead. He questioned his ability to be a good father. The following morning, Maxwell rose early, the burden of his choice from the previous night still heavy on his mind. He gazed at his reflection in the mirror, splashing cold water on his face in an attempt to dispel the persistent fatigue that clung to him. His mind wandered repeatedly to Rachel and the twins. He had consented to their meeting, but what comes next? What did it signify for him to encounter children he had never known, children he was now expected to recognize as his own? He lingered in his office for the better part of the morning, yet his mind wandered, eluding any semblance of concentration. The figures, the gatherings, the agreements all felt insignificant. He gazed at his phone, hoping it would ring with the answers he sought, yet silence prevailed. He had sent a message to Rachel to confirm their meeting time for later that afternoon, but that was all there was to it. He was completely unprepared for what he encountered when he laid eyes on the twins. Would they resemble him? Would they inherit his gaze or his grin? Or might they remain total strangers? At last, as the clock struck noon, he resolved to leave his office and take a stroll to refresh his mind. He required some distance, a moment to reflect and perhaps to collect his thoughts before the meeting. His feet guided him to a park close to his office in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. The park exuded a serene atmosphere, where individuals found solace on benches or meandered past the fountains, absorbed in their own reflections. Maxwell, usually averse to being alone, found himself embracing the stillness in that moment. As he strolled down the path, the gentle melody of birds singing in the trees was the sole interruption to the stillness. He attempted to soothe his anxiety by inhaling deeply and allowing the crisp air to refresh his thoughts. Only when he settled onto the bench, gazing across the pond, did he come to understand the profound shift awaiting him. He had reached a conclusion, and now there was no turning back. The children, Rachel, had woven themselves into his narrative, regardless of his preparedness for their presence. Maxwell checked his watch, a sense of urgency washing over him as he acknowledged it was time to return to his office. An unusual urgency gripped his chest, intertwining excitement with a hint of dread. No matter how hard he attempted to brace himself, the anxiety of what lay ahead lingered in his mind. What might unfold if the twins were not fond of him? What if he turned out to be someone entirely different from the father they envisioned? What if Rachel had misjudged everything? Upon his return to the building, a wave of anxiety washed over him, intensifying with each step. He inhaled deeply before entering the elevator, attempting to steady his nerves. This was the moment. The point of no return had been reached. He had to meet the twins to discover for himself whether they were truly his offspring. Yet, beneath the surface, he understood that this moment transcended the mere act of a paternity test. It was a pivotal point concerning the future and the life he had been meticulously crafting all along. The elevator doors slid open on his floor, and Maxwell strode into his office, where his assistant Jenny awaited his arrival. She glanced up from her desk as he walked in, her face a mask of neutrality tinged with worry. "Are you all right, Maxwell?" she inquired, observing the tightness in his stance. Maxwell managed a smile, yet it failed to illuminate his eyes. "Indeed, I'm doing well. Just have a lot swirling around in my thoughts." Jenny arched an eyebrow, her silence speaking volumes. Having spent years in his service, she understood the delicate balance of providing him with solitude and the right moment to extend a word of support. "The meeting with Rachel is scheduled for about an hour from now, correct?" Maxwell gave a slight nod. "Indeed, I just require a little more time to gather my thoughts." Jenny chose not to pursue the matter any further, offering him a brief nod before turning her attention back to her tasks. Maxwell lingered at his desk, the stack of papers before him utterly neglected. His mind drifted back to the approaching meeting. He felt a swirl of emotions, yet one thing stood out unmistakably. The truth lay bare before him. Regardless of his feelings, the moment had arrived for him to face his children. Time slipped away in a haze. Maxwell sensed the relentless passage of time, each tick drawing nearer to the pivotal moment that would alter his fate forever. As the moment arrived, he rose to his feet, adjusting his jacket with care before stepping out of his office, with Jenny trailing closely behind. They proceeded to the elevator and descended to the lobby of the building, where Rachel awaited them. She lingered at the entrance, her anxiety mirroring his own. Upon spotting him, she offered a gentle wave, her smile faint yet genuine. "Maxwell," she murmured, her tone gentle, tinged with hesitation. "Rachel," he responded, his voice carrying a hint of tension he hadn't meant to convey. "How are they doing?" Rachel's eyes glimmered with a hint of excitement. "They are looking forward to meeting you. Since this morning, they've been inquiring about your whereabouts." Maxwell paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. He found himself at a loss, and her words about their excitement only deepened his uncertainty. What if he fell short of their expectations? What if they perceived him as an outsider, an individual who had no place in their world? "I'll be fine," Maxwell declared, even as doubt lingered in his mind. He trailed behind Rachel as she exited the building and approached the car parked outside, attempting to dispel the constriction in his chest. The journey to Rachel's apartment seemed to stretch on endlessly. Each turn, each stoplight seemed to mark a ticking clock, and as they approached their destination, Maxwell's stomach churned with increasing intensity. As they reached the destination, Rachel guided him to the entrance, and for a brief moment, silence enveloped them both. Rachel swung the door open and called out, her voice brimming with excitement. "Children, Maxwell has arrived." Maxwell entered the apartment, his gaze sweeping across the room, and then he beheld them, 2 children, a boy and a girl, each with wide eyes and smiles that appeared almost too large for their faces. They appeared so tiny, so pure, and yet there was an undeniable quality about them that tugged at his heartstrings. Rachel knelt beside them. "Maxwell, these are your offspring. Here we have Emma and Jake." Before he had the chance to speak, Emma dashed towards him, extending her small hand. "Hello, Daddy," she said, her voice soft and laced with purity. Maxwell felt a sudden tightness in his throat. "Father." She referred to him as Daddy. His knees buckled. This was genuine. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell lingered in the doorway, his mind racing to comprehend the scene unfolding before him. Emma's small hand extended toward him, her face radiating a purity that only the young can embody. Jake, her twin brother, gazed up at him with wide eyes, his fingers gripping the edge of his sister's shirt. Time seemed to stand still, leaving Maxwell frozen in place. His body was present, yet his mind wandered far beyond, struggling to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. Before him stood his children, his son and daughter, reaching out and calling him Daddy. Rachel's voice cut through his reverie. "They've been eagerly anticipating your arrival, Maxwell," she said gently, positioned by the door with a warm yet anxious smile. "I trust it won't be too much to handle." Maxwell shook his head, a sudden dryness creeping into his mouth. He found himself caught in a whirlwind, unsure whether it was the abrupt shift into fatherhood or the gravity of the circumstances that was pressing down on him. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice barely rising above a whisper. Rachel moved in, her hand softly landing on his arm. "It's all right. Feel free to proceed at your own pace. They are simply delighted to make your acquaintance." The twins, perceiving his uncertainty, both advanced a step closer. Emma's voice, tender and open, resonated softly in the stillness of the room. "Will you join us for some fun, Daddy?" Maxwell felt a jolt at the mention of the word. He repeated it, still attempting to grasp the entirety of it all. Jake's petite visage brightened with joy. "We enjoy playing games with Mom, but now that you're here, things are different. Feel free to join in the fun." Rachel smiled softly as she observed Maxwell kneeling down to their level, the sound of his knees creaking echoing the unusualness of the moment. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, before extending his hand toward Emma. It was warm, small, and incredibly delicate. For the first time in his life, he encountered a profound sense of duty that was entirely new to him. These children, these pure little beings belonged to him. In that instant, Maxwell understood that his entire existence was on the brink of transformation, regardless of his preparedness. I suppose we could play, Maxwell said, a slight tremor in his voice as he offered a smile to the twins. Initially, it felt a bit uncomfortable. He was completely unfamiliar with engaging in play with children. However, Emma and Jake appeared to instinctively understand how to guide him through it. They led him into the living room, where toys and an array of art supplies lay scattered across the floor. Rachel trailed behind them, her gaze a blend of pride and relief. Maxwell settled in with the twins as Emma presented him with a plush toy. "This is Mr. Bear," she said with a playful giggle. "He could really use a hug." Maxwell grasped the stuffed animal from her, attempting to reflect her excitement. "Mr. Bear, huh?" he said, managing a smile while embracing the toy. Emma's hands came together in a joyful clap, and even Jake, who had been somewhat reserved, began to show a smile. For the next few hours, Maxwell released the burdens of business pressures that had weighed on him for so long. He was free from the weight of deals and deadlines, as well as the expectations that had perpetually loomed above him. Instead, he directed his attention to the children before him, their laughter and excitement enveloping the space. It was an unusual sensation, one he hadn't realized he was longing for until this moment. Rachel perched on the couch, her gaze fixed on the unfolding scene, a gentle smile gracing her lips. She noticed the tension in Maxwell's shoulders start to dissipate as he engaged with the twins. It was evident that he was having a hard time adapting, yet his efforts were significant to her. She had never anticipated that he would transform into an ideal father in an instant, yet she held on to the hope that, with time, they could cultivate a bond, a connection. Maxwell lifted his eyes from the game they were engrossed in, meeting Rachel's gaze. I can't believe this is real," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "I've always been so dedicated to my career that the idea of having children or becoming a father never crossed my mind." Rachel nodded slowly, her expression becoming gentler. "I understand. I never anticipated this outcome either, yet life has a way of surprising us." Maxwell exhaled gently. "I'm simply working on figuring this out. I want to ensure everything goes perfectly." Rachel smiled, her eyes radiating warmth and reassurance. "You're not isolated in this, Maxwell. Let's work through this together." Maxwell cast a quick look over his shoulder at the twins, who were completely absorbed in their game. They embodied a sense of freedom and purity. It was difficult to fathom that only a few hours earlier, he had been filled with dread at the thought of meeting them. As he observed their laughter and playful antics, he came to the realization that a connection was beginning to take shape. Perhaps it wasn't flawless, and perhaps he still had a journey ahead, but he was beginning to sense something he hadn't anticipated. He was beginning to embrace the role of a father. As the afternoon progressed, the room fell into a hushed stillness, and the day's exhilaration gradually faded away. Emma and Jake grew weary of their game, stifling yawns as their tiny eyes began to droop. Maxwell, uncertain about how to traverse this unfamiliar landscape, experienced a surge of protectiveness enveloping him. He was uncertain about what lay ahead, yet there was one truth he held firmly in his mind. He would always stand by them, come what may. Rachel rose from her seat and made her way over to the twins. "All right, little ones," she said softly, "it's time for a nap. You both put in a great effort today." Emma and Jake nodded, their tiny heads already weighed down by the embrace of slumber. Rachel assisted them in getting comfortable on the couch, draping a blanket over them for warmth. Maxwell lingered at a distance, his gaze fixed intently on the pair as they slipped into slumber. The room was enveloped in a serene stillness, and for the first time in years, Maxwell experienced a profound sense of tranquility. Rachel faced him, her voice gentle yet resolute, while the twins slumbered peacefully. "Maxwell, I understand this may be overwhelming. I understand that it can be quite daunting. Yet they seek not perfection. They yearn simply for love." Maxwell swallowed hard, his throat constricted. "I am capable of accomplishing that. I have the capacity to love them." Rachel beamed with a gentle warmth. "I believe in your abilities." For a brief instant, the outside world appeared to dissolve, and Maxwell became enveloped in the serene solace of the present. These two children, his own, had now woven themselves into the fabric of his existence. In a matter of mere hours, he realized that embracing the role of their father was the most significant endeavor he would ever undertake. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell stirred from his slumber, roused by the gentle tap at his door. The sun had just begun to peek over the skyline of New York City, spilling a gentle warmth through the curtains of his apartment. He rubbed his eyes, attempting to dispel the lingering haze of slumber, his thoughts still ensnared in the happenings of the day before. He was astonished by the dramatic transformation his life had undergone in such a brief span. Just the night before, he had encountered his children for the first time. Twins, a son and a daughter, Emma and Jake. The reality of fatherhood was gradually starting to settle in. As he dragged himself from the warmth of his bed and approached the door, the knock resounded once more, this time with greater urgency. As he opened the door, he was greeted by the sight of Rachel in the hallway, cradling 2 cups of coffee in her hands. Her eyes held a weariness, yet a soft smile graced her lips, expressing a blend of relief and hope. "Good morning," she murmured gently, extending one of the cups toward him. "I figured this could be of help to you." Maxwell grasped the coffee, savoring the comforting warmth that enveloped his fingers. "Thanks," he murmured, his voice still raspy from slumber. "How are the little ones doing?" "They remain in slumber," Rachel responded, entering the apartment. "They experienced quite the thrilling late night yesterday. However, I believe they are adapting quite nicely. They are absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to see you again today." Maxwell nodded, his eyes wandering to the couch, where Emma and Jake had spent the night in slumber. He hadn't anticipated this sensation, as if a piece had finally fallen into place, something that had always eluded him. Yet, with their presence in his life, he experienced a newfound sense of responsibility that he had never realized he possessed. He hadn't intended to find himself in this situation, not truly, but now that he was present, he couldn't simply turn his back and leave. "Do you believe I'm prepared for this?" Maxwell inquired, his voice scarcely rising above a murmur. "I've only just met them, and now they want me to take on the role of their father. I find myself at a loss, unsure of my direction." Rachel gently rested her hand on his shoulder, offering comfort. "Perfection isn't necessary, Maxwell. There isn't anyone. Simply being present for them is what truly matters. What they seek is not an ideal father, but one who shows genuine concern." Maxwell inhaled deeply, allowing the words to resonate within him. It was simpler to say than to accomplish. He dedicated countless years to his profession, ascending the corporate hierarchy, negotiating agreements, and striving for achievement. Now, out of the blue, he found himself required to assume an entirely new role. He had always felt uncertain about fatherhood, yet Rachel's words brought him solace. Perhaps he didn't need to possess all the answers immediately. Perhaps merely being present was sufficient. He settled into the small dining table, cradling his coffee as he gazed out the window at the bustling city below. Rachel took a seat beside him, cradling her own cup. The quietness enveloping them felt at ease, yet an unvoiced tension lingered in the atmosphere. They both understood that the journey ahead would be challenging, yet for the first time, Maxwell sensed he wasn't facing it alone. After a brief pause, Rachel's voice pierced the quiet once more. "I won't sugarcoat it, Maxwell. This will pose quite a challenge. The children have faced numerous challenges. They have no recollection of their biological father, yet they have experienced their fair share of heartbreak. And they have come to depend on me. Now they will need to develop their trust in you as well." Maxwell felt a wave of unease wash over him at the thought. Trust was a delicate process, one that required patience and could not be hurried. He needed to prove himself not only through his words but also through his deeds. He felt uncertain about whether he was prepared to bear the burden of that responsibility. He finally spoke, his voice calm yet filled with uncertainty. "I simply want to ensure everything goes smoothly. I want to ensure they know I'm fully present for them." Rachel's demeanor became gentler. I doubt they will consider that. They are merely children, Maxwell. They seek affection, not flawlessness. As long as you demonstrate your concern, everything will turn out well. As Rachel wrapped up her words, a faint sound emerged from the living room. Emma had opened her eyes to the world. Her tiny feet softly touched the floor as she approached them, her disheveled hair a testament to her slumber. She gazed up at Maxwell, her large blue eyes filled with wonder. "Good morning, Daddy," she exclaimed cheerfully, her tone brimming with purity. "Will you join us for playtime again today?" Maxwell's heart raced at the utterance of the word, Daddy. It remained an experience that seemed almost otherworldly, as if plucked from the fabric of a dream. Yet, witnessing Emma standing there, gazing at him with such trust and excitement, made him acutely aware of the extent of his growth. He smiled, his anxiety dissipating as their eyes locked. "Absolutely, I will. What shall we dive into today?" Emma's expression brightened. "Let's have some fun with the blocks. A grand tower can be constructed by us." Maxwell let out a soft laugh, placing his coffee cup on the table before rising to join her. He was completely unaware of how to construct a tower with blocks, yet the excitement in Emma's voice inspired him to give it a shot. He trailed behind her into the living room, where Jake was stirring awake, his hands moving to rub the sleep from his eyes. "Good morning, Dad," Jake murmured, his voice heavy with sleep, a smile playing at the edges of his mouth. "Are we joining in on the fun as well?" Maxwell gave a slight nod. "Absolutely, my friend." The subsequent hours unfolded in a whirlwind of joy and playful antics. Maxwell sat on the floor alongside the twins, crafting towers and weaving tales about the blocks they piled high together. The games were straightforward, yet they meant the world to Emma and Jake. To his astonishment, they were beginning to hold significance for him as well. As he observed the twins at play, he came to understand that fatherhood was unfolding within him, not through monumental events, but through the quiet, daily gestures of love and mindfulness. As the morning faded into afternoon, Rachel took her leave to attend to some errands, leaving Maxwell in the company of the twins. It was quiet for a while, and Maxwell began to think about the future. He wasn't sure what it held. He didn't know how long it would take for him to truly feel like a father, or whether he'd ever get everything right. But one thing was clear: he wasn't going anywhere. He had made a promise to these children, and he intended to keep it. Maxwell sat back on the couch, his arms stretched out around the twins who were now sitting beside him, both of them quietly resting. He didn't know what was next, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was where he was supposed to be. Before going to the next chapter, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with your friends. Maxwell had been living in the whirlwind of fatherhood for almost a week now. Every morning the sound of Emma and Jake's laughter had become the soundtrack of his life. He still wasn't entirely sure he knew what he was doing, but the more time he spent with them, the more comfortable he became with the role. It wasn't easy, and there were days when doubt crept in, but there was something about seeing their faces light up when he walked through the door that made it all worth it. It had been a quiet morning when Rachel called him from the kitchen, her voice sounding unusually tense. "Maxwell, we need to talk." His heart dropped at the tone of her voice. It was like the calm before a storm, and Maxwell couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. He stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans, and walked toward the kitchen, where Rachel was standing at the counter. Her expression was serious, but there was an underlying sense of concern in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Maxwell asked, trying to gauge the situation. Rachel hesitated for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "I received a call this morning from a lawyer. It's about the twins' biological father." Maxwell's stomach sank. He had known the day would come when they would have to face the reality of the children's past, but he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. "What did they say?" "They wish to have a meeting with us," Rachel said, her voice gentle. "It seems the court has scheduled a hearing, and they are seeking custody of Emma and Jake." Maxwell sensed a tightness in his throat. He had already forged an unbreakable connection with the children, and the thought of someone else potentially taking them away was simply intolerable. A sense of impending doom loomed over him, as if all his efforts from the past week were teetering on the brink of collapse. Life without them was beyond his imagination now. Could that be a possibility? Is it truly possible for them to be taken away? Rachel's expression hardened, and she gave a slight shake of her head. The situation is intricate. The biological father possesses rights, and it appears he is making an effort to assert them. We must head to court and advocate for custody. Maxwell rested against the doorframe, thoughts swirling in his head. Though he lacked familiarity with the legal system, he sensed that this would be a fierce struggle. It transcended mere legalities. It was fundamentally about who could provide Emma and Jake with the stability, love, and care they truly required. Maxwell was certain, without a hint of hesitation, that he was prepared to battle for them, to embody the father they truly deserved. "I won't let them go," he declared, his voice resolute. "No matter the cost, I will not abandon them." Rachel's gaze grew tender as she moved nearer to him. "I understand that you won't. However, this will be quite challenging. We will require legal representation, and it will be necessary to demonstrate to the court that you are the one they should choose to be with. It will be a challenge." Maxwell nodded, the gravity of the situation settling upon him. He had always been a man who preferred to steer his own course, yet now he sensed he was being carried away by currents he could not comprehend. Yet, he refused to allow that to hinder his progress. He had grown fond of these children and would go to great lengths to ensure their safety. In the days that followed, Maxwell and Rachel took the essential steps to prepare. They engaged the services of a lawyer, a woman named Allison, who was well regarded and possessed a wealth of experience in custody disputes. Allison exuded clarity, assurance, and straightforwardness. She was straightforward, and Maxwell valued that honesty. She clarified that the biological father, named Eric, had a background of instability and was not equipped to offer the kind of environment the twins required. Nevertheless, the judicial system would probably grant him some form of visitation, and they needed to be ready for that possibility. Maxwell dedicated countless hours to meticulously examining the case alongside Allison, collecting every document and piece of evidence that could bolster their stance. It was a grueling experience, sapping both his mental and emotional energy, yet he refused to retreat. Each moment dedicated to preparing for the court hearing brought him closer to ensuring a bright future for Emma and Jake. The day of the hearing came upon us more quickly than anticipated. Maxwell stood before the courthouse, his palms clammy as he fiddled with his tie. Rachel stood beside him, her expression one yet determined. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable weight of uncertainty enveloping them. The twins were under the watchful eye of a friend for the day, yet Maxwell couldn't dispel the nagging sense that everything would change once the court proceedings began. Upon entering the courthouse, the formidable structure appeared to embody the seriousness of the moment. Their footsteps reverberated through the corridors as they neared the courtroom. Maxwell's heart raced, and he struggled to focus on anything besides the challenge that lay before him. He needed to stay resilient for the kids, for Rachel, and for his own sake. The courtroom, though modest in size, exuded a sense of formality, with the judge presiding at the front. Eric, the biological father, occupied the opposite side of the room, his expression set with resolve. Maxwell felt a surge of frustration welling up inside him. How could this man, who had forsaken his children, now believe he possessed the right to claim them? As the hearing commenced, the opposing lawyer contended that Eric ought to have custody of the twins, emphasizing that they were his biological offspring. He crafted a portrayal of a father eager to engage in his children's lives, one who had transformed his habits and was now prepared to offer them a secure and nurturing environment. Maxwell absorbed the words, striving to maintain his composure. He understood it was merely a strategy, a ploy to sway the court, yet that realization did little to ease the sting of the words. As the moment arrived for them to share their thoughts, Allison eloquently laid out their argument. She emphasized Maxwell's reliable employment, his secure living situation, and most importantly, the deep affection and connection he had already established with the twins. She emphasized that he was their father not through blood, but through the bonds they had chosen. The judge paid close attention, and for a fleeting instant, Maxwell permitted himself to feel a glimmer of hope. After what seemed like an endless stretch of time, the judge called for a recess to consider the case. As Maxwell lingered in the stillness of the room alongside Rachel, the gravity of the circumstances bore heavily upon him. He had exhausted every possible effort. At this moment, his only option was to remain patient. The courtroom door swung open, and the judge re-entered, his face a mask of inscrutability. Maxwell rose, his breath caught in his chest. The judge announced that a decision has been reached by the court. The court has decided in the custody case of Emma and Jake, ruling in favor of Mr. Maxwell Thompson. Maxwell felt a sudden jolt in his chest. A wave of relief surged through him as Rachel inhaled sharply next to him. The end had come. The victory was theirs. The judge proceeded, stating that the biological father will have supervised visitation, with the case set to be reviewed in 6 months to evaluate the circumstances. Maxwell acknowledged the judge's ruling with a thoughtful nod. While the result may not have been flawless, it still marked a triumph. He had firmly established himself as the father of Emma and Jake, and no effort, not even Eric's attempts to separate them, would alter that fact. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell perched on the edge of the couch in their living room, his thoughts swirling around him. The legal struggle had taken a toll on him, yet a fragment of his being was starting to embrace a sense of tranquility. Emma and Jake had been part of their lives for a few weeks now, and their home had gradually started to embody the essence of a true family. The laughter, the chaos, the endless questions of where's my favorite toy and can we have ice cream, had woven themselves into the fabric of his everyday existence, and he was beginning to understand the depth of his affection for these two small beings. The evening following the court's decision was steeped in subdued revelry. Rachel had put together a modest dinner, simple yet satisfying, and it was just right. They required little beyond one another to experience a profound sense of appreciation and optimism. Despite their victory in court, a sense of unease continued to haunt Maxwell. Eric's supervised visits served as a poignant reminder that the struggle was far from finished. Rachel had been unusually silent over the last few days, a fact that Maxwell found impossible to overlook. He observed the quiet changes in her demeanor, how she rose early each morning and slipped away into the kitchen with her phone, the faraway gaze in her eyes when she believed no one was watching. He felt the urge to address it, to inquire about her troubles, yet each attempt left him at a loss for how to start. Later that week, as he was driving home from work, the call came in. The digits displayed were strange, yet the name linked to them sent a chill through him. It was Rachel Thompson, as the caller ID displayed. A heavy sensation settled in his chest. Rachel had departed the house earlier that afternoon, assuring him she'd return shortly, yet she had not. He picked up the phone, his voice strained. "Is that you, Rachel? Where might you be? I have been attempting to get in touch with you." A hush fell over the line before Rachel's voice broke through, quivering with emotion. "Maxwell, I'm not quite sure how to express this, but I need you to come to the hospital. My name is Emma. She has been involved in an accident." His blood turned to ice. His heart seemed to freeze in time, and he struggled to draw in a breath. What transpired? "Is she all right?" "Just come to the hospital," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "Maxwell, please hurry." The journey to the hospital stretched on endlessly. With each passing second, the tension in his stomach tightened further. He was unable to comprehend the fear that engulfed him. Emma, the young girl he had grown to cherish as his own, found herself in a predicament. What transpired? Did she sustain any injuries? What if something had occurred to her that he was powerless to mend? Upon his arrival at the hospital, he found Rachel in the lobby, her complexion wan and her expression taut. She hurried to him the moment she caught sight of him, and he embraced her tightly. "What happened?" he inquired once more, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "I don't know all the details," Rachel said, her voice trembling. She found herself at the park, enjoying the company of friends when one of them playfully shoved her off the swings. She stumbled and struck her head. It was conveyed that the situation held significant gravity. Maxwell's thoughts surged with intensity. He was utterly bewildered by the sounds that reached his ears. Emma, vibrant and full of energy, always darting about with laughter, had experienced pain. A chill ran down his spine as they approached the emergency room, a cold sweat forming on his brow. The waiting room buzzed with the tension of anxious families, yet Maxwell found himself fixated solely on the relentless ticking of the clock mounted on the wall. Each passing minute stretched endlessly, and he struggled to remain motionless. He continued to pace, his anxiety unraveling with each fleeting moment. At last, a nurse emerged, and Rachel hurried to greet her. The nurse's expression was grave, yet a glimmer of comfort shone in her eyes, something Maxwell held onto with all his might. "Will she be all right?" Rachel inquired, her voice quivering. "She's in recovery," the nurse stated with a calm and steady tone. "She sustained a significant head injury and has remained unconscious for some time. Yet the medical team holds a sense of optimism. While it's still premature to draw any conclusions, we are putting forth our utmost effort." Maxwell exhaled, surprised to find he had been holding his breath. His legs felt unsteady, and he sank back into the chair next to Rachel, who had turned ashen. "I can't lose her," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. Rachel grasped his hand firmly, her grip unwavering. "We will not let her go. She possesses great strength." After what felt like an eternity, they were finally granted the chance to see Emma. She lay in a hospital bed, her petite figure appearing delicate against the stark whiteness of the room. A bandage encircled her head, with tubes and monitors connected to her. Yet the most chilling aspect was the void reflected in her eyes. She remained unresponsive, her breaths measured yet faint. Maxwell lingered at the edge of the bed, paralyzed by an unseen force. His heart shattered into pieces. He had never realized that something so tiny, something so dear, could seem so delicate. This was not the future he had envisioned for them. He envisioned being present for Emma and Jake, guiding them as they learned to ride bikes, embarking on adventures together, and celebrating their significant moments. Yet here in this sterile room, all those dreams felt so far away. Rachel inched nearer to the bed, her fingertips lightly grazing Emma's hand. "Please wake up, baby," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your presence is essential to us." Maxwell observed the scene before him, a sense of helplessness washing over him. Words fell short in the face of this, unable to soothe the ache that lingered. All he could do was remain by Rachel's side, filled with a sense of hope, hoping that Emma would awaken and be all right. The following days unfolded in a fog of anxiety and doubt. Emma lay still, her unconscious form a heavy weight on Maxwell's heart. Each time the doctors assessed her vitals, a surge of anxiety coursed through him, as he clung to the hope that they would utter words of reassurance, something to light the darkness of uncertainty. Rachel remained close, and Maxwell was present whenever possible, yet his role was limited to providing solace. At long last, after what felt like a lifetime, Emma's eyes fluttered open. The first thing she asked was, "Is Jake here?" Though her voice trembled, it resonated with a beauty that Maxwell had never encountered before. Rachel released a tremulous chuckle, her gaze brimming with tears. "Indeed, darling, Jake has arrived. Everyone has gathered. You will be perfectly okay." Maxwell beamed, a wave of relief washing over him. It wasn't over yet. There would be further recovery and more days in the hospital. However, at that moment, it felt as though everything had shifted. Emma would emerge unscathed. Before we dive into the next chapter, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Maxwell perched by the window in the cozy living room, gazing out at the bustling world beyond. The sun dipped below the horizon, enveloping the Manhattan neighborhood in a gentle golden glow, and for the first time in weeks, he experienced a profound sense of tranquility. Emma sat on the floor, engrossed in her toys, while Jake reclined on the couch, his head comfortably resting on a pillow. Rachel busied herself in the kitchen, crafting a meal for the evening. Their laughter, intertwined with the everyday sounds of life, had transformed into a comforting symphony for Maxwell. The tumult of recent months, with its legal struggles, medical appointments, and lingering doubt, seemed to be receding into the distance at last. 6 months had passed since the accident. Emma had fully recovered, bringing relief to all, yet the emotional scars lingered on. Maxwell had never truly grasped the connection between a parent and a child until he experienced the trials alongside Rachel. The experience transcended mere physical recovery. It was an emotional odyssey, woven with threads of fear, hope, and the profound love that enveloped each moment. Witnessing Emma emerge from that unconscious state marked a pivotal moment for him, illuminating the profound depths of his feelings for both her and Jake. Rachel had been his steadfast support through those challenging moments, and he couldn't envision a life devoid of her presence. They had faced an unforeseen challenge together, and in doing so, their connection had deepened. After enduring countless struggles for their family, they were now able to savor the tranquility that had once felt unattainable. Maxwell understood that the future held no promises, yet for the first time, a sense of hope blossomed within him. Their adventure together was marked by surprising turns at every corner. The whole saga began with a dramatic entrance into the CEO's office, as Emma stormed in with the twins, proclaiming that Maxwell was their father. The reality was far more intricate than anyone could have anticipated, and it required all of Rachel and Maxwell's resilience to maneuver through the obstacles that ensued. Yet here they were, nestled in their warm abode, with the laughter of children echoing around them, as if the universe had finally found its harmony. Maxwell's eyes flicked toward Rachel as she stepped into the living room, balancing 2 plates of food in her hands. Her face had mellowed over time, the strain of recent months giving way to the serene satisfaction of a family finally settling into its rhythm. "Dinner's ready," she announced with a warm smile, setting the plates down on the table. "Thank you," Maxwell remarked as he stood up from his chair and approached the table. Aromatic and delightful. Rachel's smile widened as she settled down next to him. They dined in a cozy quietude for a brief while, relishing the uncomplicated joy of a meal enjoyed together. Emma and Jake were already embroiled in a spirited debate over who would claim the final piece of chicken, their voices escalating in a lively contest. Maxwell found himself unable to suppress a laugh. It was an ordinary scene, one he could never have envisioned just a year prior, when he was still wrestling with the sudden reality of unexpected fatherhood. As the meal drew to a close, Rachel faced Maxwell, her demeanor solemn. "I've been reflecting quite a bit recently," she murmured, her voice soft, "regarding all that has transpired. Let's discuss our story." Maxwell placed his fork on the table, a feeling of anticipation washing over him as he sensed that something significant was about to unfold. "What thoughts are swirling in your head?" he inquired softly. Rachel paused, her gaze drifting to the children, who were now absorbed in their game. "I understand that it hasn't been simple, yet I believe we've both evolved through this experience. In a positive light, I have no desire to return to the way things used to be." Maxwell extended his arm across the table, gently grasping her hand. "I feel the same way. I have discovered deeper insights about myself and the true essence of love and protection for another, far beyond what I ever imagined. We have faced numerous challenges, yet we emerge more resilient than ever." Rachel beamed, her gaze radiating warmth. "We've created something truly remarkable, Maxwell. Something that belongs to us. I aspire to continue developing it." Maxwell felt a surge of deep emotion within him. He had never experienced such unwavering certainty about anything before. "I feel the same way. I am committed to ensuring that we are always there for one another." The words lingered in the space between them, a vow of a future brimming with potential. It was clear that the journey ahead would be challenging, as life often is, yet their bond provided the strength they needed to face it together. As time went on, Maxwell and Rachel gradually discovered their flow in parenting Emma and Jake. The children had embraced their new life in a manner that astonished even themselves. Moments of uncertainty, doubts, fears, and old wounds lingered, yet as time passed, they became less frequent. Maxwell discovered that he was increasingly drawn into the lives of the children. He attended their school performances, cheered at their soccer matches, and engaged in deep conversations late into the night. He discovered the profound essence of genuinely caring for another, seeing it not merely as an obligation but as a cherished honor. Rachel and Maxwell's bond deepened as well. The challenges they encountered had forged a stronger bond between them, and they both recognized that they had built something enduring. It transcended the mere act of raising two children. It was about crafting a genuine family, one rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect. They had transcended the role of co-parents, becoming true partners in every conceivable way. Thus, existence continued its journey. The court battles had ceased, and uncertainty was a thing of the past. Emma and Jake flourished in their nurturing environment, while Maxwell and Rachel had at last discovered their tranquility. They had their flaws, yet joy filled their lives. And that sufficed. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe to our channel, like, and share it with your friends.